What is going on, everyone? William Spencer here, and I have a exciting guest with me today, Dr. David Bray, a KSU professor. And Professor, where is it that you particularly hone in on at KSU? What do you teach?
I'm a professor of finance in the Economics and Finance Department in the Coles College of Business. I do want to say that everything I say today is from a concerned taxpayer's point of view, and I do not speak for my employer.
I love it, man. You know, I used to have to do the same thing with the Marine Corps. If, I had to say something public, or I wanted to say something public to express my views, I'd have to say, oh, this isn't representation of the Marine Corps by and large. It's a representation of myself. I totally understand that. Dr. David Bray, we have a particularly interesting conversation to go over today. And you, in particular, have a very interesting story to share with us today. And what I want to get started off with is how long have you been teaching?
This is my 19th year. I cannot believe it. Time flies. Gray hair comes. And this is going on 20 years. I taught at Florida State University during my PhD program, and then here at Kennesaw State for 12 years.
So you've been teaching at KSU for 12 years. Wow, and I'm sure it's been an awesome career.
Yes, it's been amazing until the last couple of years.
Well, you mentioned the last couple years, and that's really where we want to start kind of honing in on a little bit. Can you give me a little bit of a background as to what it is that we're going to be talking about today, in particular, the things that you have observed recently at KSU?
Sure. In the last couple of years, I would say since the tragic death of George Floyd, that event sparked some things, obviously, in the country. And it appears as if the administration has been hijacked by some type of, racialized Marxism group or something. And a couple of emails, a couple of trainings, things that are going on at the university that just aren't right. They don't sit well with my moral compass. And so I felt the need to speak up for good people, faculty, staff, and students that weren't being represented on the campus.
Well, you talk about how this is kind of a departure from your moral compass. You used to not think that way. I was having a conversation with you not too long ago, and you were saying it's like, Will, I used to be in this bubble. I was there. I was living it. I was, kind of exemplifying it. What's changed, man?
Well, when the news sources that I used to watch started to make excuses for criminal behavior, a red flag went off. I said, wait a minute. This isn't right. Criminal behavior should not be honored or applauded. Therefore, maybe I should start looking at other news sources. And then it really opened my eyes as to what was going on politically in the country. My moral compass always worked. We just didn't have these huge red flags going off on campus through emails and trainings that alerted me to any of this. In fact, it's been brewing for years, I've heard. In academia, and now that I'm aware of it, I'm willing to fight the good fight.
You say aware of it. Dr. Bray, define it.
It is, I think, hiding behind the diversity, equity, and inclusion scam, I call it. It's this underlying oppression Olympics, right? Everybody's competing for the gold medal in the oppression Olympics. Therefore, straight white men who happen to be Christian and cisgendered finish last, according to this doctrine. And it's kind of infiltrated everything, like all departments. The business school, we're the capitalist center of the campus. It made its way to us finally, and it's trying to make its way into STEM, right? I can't imagine anything other than meritocracy and physics, but they're trying. And so it is this underlying weaponization, I call it, of skin color, gender, and sexual orientation, ... All of those things combined. It's weaponized against those who had privilege in the past, right? I can't deny privilege in the past, but now they're pretending as if it's privilege today. And that's where I can't go along with the Looney Tunes.
You just kind of draw the line at that point, huh?
Absolutely.
Well, Dr. David Bray, it's interesting that you kind of bring this up because you talk about you have a very long, extensive career in regard to teaching, right? So you've taught, before any of this was kind of going on. So you have a fairly unique perspective here. Can you give us, dial in, if you will, what it looked like before versus what it looks like teaching now with this stuff getting implemented?
Well, I'll also tell your viewers that I never had social media. I got off social media when MySpace died. I think that was 2007. I never had social media until 3 months ago. So I missed those echo chambers. So when I say I wasn't aware of it, that's a good reason why I wasn't aware of it, right? I mean, I was just living reality, not social media. 15 years ago, or even 10 years ago, things were different. People weren't so laser focused on race and gender like they are today. And I believe that's what woke, right? When I define, people ask me, what is woke? I say it's an obsession with skin color, gender, and sexual orientation to the point of wanting to create initiatives and policies to benefit one group over another group. And that just wasn't in my face, so I wasn't paying attention to it until things made it to my office.
Well, in regard to like the in-classroom stuff, you say, you're dealing with trainings, you're dealing with policies getting pushed down to the teacher level. Is there anything that's making the teacher they have to conform to this stuff?
So not necessarily in the business school. The one thing that made its way to the business school were diversity, equity, and inclusion modules inside of a 0 credit hour class that students have to take in the business school for professionalism. And so under the umbrella of student success, which is a whole nother talk, under that umbrella, there's these courses that students have to take. And in one of the modules, they have to watch videos on trans people in the workplace, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And they're giving the students their opinion, right? And students have come to me and said, hey, I don't feel comfortable giving them my real opinion on this stuff, right? And that's where I have a problem. These students pay tuition. All of them pay the same dollar amount. Everybody should be treated equally and fairly.
Yeah, Dr. Bray, it's been a fascinating ride for me as well. Like I said earlier, I come from the Marine Corps, right? We all bleed green is something we say very often, because we're all Marines. We make the cog machine work. And coming to the collegiate environment, I was thinking, okay, well, I'm going to go here and I'm going to, learn, and it's going to be exceptional. And that was when I first started seeing truly the divisiveness that these programs and these teachings were going on. And they're socially derivative, right? What you described in your business school, setup, it sounds like they're creating a social environment within the business school itself, which, arguably what crunches numbers more than anything.
Bottom line. Yeah,
and it sounds like they're trying to create a social environment within business itself to perpetuate this out to other, business prospects when they graduate and things of that nature.
When you hire non-business folks in the business school, you'll get what you hire. And I'm trying to say that in the nicest way possible. These people, some of the people who work in this industry, student success industry, are social justice advocates, right? And the business school is not where that should be tolerated, right? And I'm not sure how much of the pressure gets placed on administrators, and they're just trying to pick the path of least resistance. But it doesn't matter. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And I'll speak up anytime we see social justice type of things entered into the business school. I teach finance. We teach, what's the goal of financial management? Well, to maximize shareholder value, the owners of the company, right? It's not to make you feel good, right?
Now, something I do want to bring up, because you talk about speaking up, right? Now, before, again, this goes back to like the whole being stuck in the bubble thing. You used to be in the bubble of all this stuff and not really seeing what it was. But now that you've noticed it and you've seen it and you've observed it, right? You're speaking up. How has the dynamic changed between yourself and maybe even faculty, as far down as that level goes?
There's a good group of us in the Coles College of Business, right? They have found their voice somewhat. And whenever we've had a couple listening sessions from a longer email that I sent to the whole college, letting them know about some of these DEI problems, both at the faculty senate level and inside the college, they root me on from the sidelines. Everybody has constraints, right? I'm homosexual. I date outside of my race. That unfortunately gives me a little bit of credibility with the other side because it's harder to destroy. They could try, but they don't want the intellectual wrath, trust me. So my colleagues, I understand that they would be the first ones to be labeled a white supremacist or a racist or a misogynist or something like that. So I understand constraints, but at some point, America's going to have to say, constraints or not, we all have to stand together.
I was watching a video not too long ago, and I made kind of a comment on it as well. It was this kid that he had been taking hormone pills, because he is transitioning to a female, right? And he was purporting that he was experiencing menstrual pains, right? Which you're looking at me right now and you think I'm crazy. Yes, that is crazy, right? And the fascinating thing was, of course, I disagreed with it. I did not agree with it. I in fact pointed out that this guy probably went through some traumatic thing in his life at an earlier point in time. And what this is a manifestation of him trying to make sense of it all and then trying to affirm him, right? And in that, we're kind of looking over the fact that this guy is in deep distress and mental pain. I got called a white supremacist. I got called a transphobe. I got called everything under the book just for the fact that I loved this guy on such a deep level that I was genuinely watching this dude be in pain. And where people were affirming him, here I am saying like, dude, I just want to be there for you. And I got called transphobe for that. So, I mean, I can't imagine, like, how is this on the professional level?
Well, first of all, you're getting called all of those names because you're getting in the way of their capitalism. They preach that capitalism is racist and transphobic and all of these things, but yet they capitalize off of the system. Right? You're getting paid 20 grand to speak for an hour about attacking people with conservative viewpoints, right? That's capitalism. So I know this doesn't really help you on a personal level, but just know that I guess whenever you're called all those names, it means you're having an impact.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So that kind of segues us into the next topic. What was the process that you had to go through to start standing up and speaking?
Well, I have a therapist now. Yeah. I never needed one of those. Well, I probably needed one, but we'll leave that for a different talk. But now I have a therapist. I've had her about a year and a half due to all this, I would call it work-related stress. I mean, it's my career. Things were smooth sailing until all of this surfaced. I've met with constitutional law experts to ask them about my rights. What can I do? What can I not do? I met with administrators, right? And I've talk to professors who are also in, I call the trenches of common sense. We talk frequently, and these people have been canceled from giving talks because of their opinions and all of these things. So there's a network. Without them, I would have not had the courage. But I will take it personal for a second. This April will be 10 years since I lost my mom, right? She died. She was only 58, never smoked a day in her life, and her lungs just gave up, right? That is the worst thing that I will ever go through in my life, right? So taking on this, I almost feel like things are working out this way for a reason. Had I not been tenured, had I not paid all of my student loan debt off, had I not lost my mother, maybe I wouldn't have the courage to speak up, right? But at this point in my life, I'm ready to go. So
you feel the security around you, and would you argue to say that on top of the tenure, on top of your life experiences, other individuals, knowing that other individuals are there right next to you, would you say that plays a huge part?
Absolutely. And I told my colleagues in the long email that I sent to the college, they come by the office in private. Most of them do not voice their opinions publicly. And I completely, again, goes back to the personal constraints they have. But I told them, keep that up. Because if I don't hear there are other people who have similar thoughts, you'll start to question. Right? That's the gaslighting. Yeah. But yeah, no, I know they're there. And I know that our opinion is the most popular one. It's just not the loudest. And I hope to get a voice to make it much, much louder.
Well, if you don't mind me getting just poking a little bit more, you talked about, your homosexuality, right? You date across, skin color and things like that.
Never queer, by the way.
Define that, right?
That's a different conversation, but yep, do not refer to me as queer. You might not like what you hear.
I love it. Well, I've got to ask, Dr. Bray, I've heard stories like this. Mostly in race, but I'm actually curious because I don't get to interact a lot with individuals who, go on the other side in terms of sexuality, right? Has anybody talked to you about like betraying the movement, given your stance and how you live your life?
Well, it's interesting when I have a conversation, and we don't have a lot of serious conversations at bars. Makes sense, right? Alcohol flowing, loud music. It's not really where you're sitting down to have an intellectual conversation. We don't have a lot of conversations, right? When I mention certain words, like I mentioned the word patriot recently, and you could have thought that I had, sworn allegiance to the far right or something. And I said, you know, the word has a meaning. It has a meaning in the dictionary. And I followed the dictionary from 20 years ago, not this woke Webster's where they changed based on social justice causes. So we don't sit down, and I don't feel comfortable having these types of talks with a lot of them because they're just not informed. I won't call it, well, ignorant. Ignorant is the clinical term, right? I'm ignorant in a lot of different things. But they're not on the level to where they can have the conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion because those words have taken such a positive meaning, right? Even though the agenda is evil behind those words, right? So I don't think they're going to have a rally for me anytime soon.
Yeah, man. You know, I totally understand. I was just, you know, I was curious because, you know, that's usually what happens. You know, when you have, you know, we can take it to a race place, right? You know, when you have a black individual, right, who says that, okay, I'm going to conform with conservative Republican values.
Uncle Tom.
They call you Uncle Tom. Exactly. And it's ridiculous to me. That is absolutely ridiculous to me. It's like, okay, I'm no longer on your side because apparently you think I'm supposed to be on your side, but since I'm not, now it's okay to name call me.
A few of my ex-boyfriends have been called those words in front of me.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you.
Did you
Racism goes both ways. I've experienced it. Anybody who, you know, lives in a large city has experienced who's white or Caucasian. Yeah, it goes both ways. And I don't even call it reverse racism because that's a misnomer. It's actually just racism, according to the dictionary.
Well, I'll say, man, if somebody, you know, said that in front of you, they must have been a brave guy because you're pretty big. You work out every morning, right?
I'm just not a violent person unless I have to defend myself.
That's usually how it's supposed to go, man. You know, you're the shepherd until you have to be the warrior. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Says, you know, also you're drinking Monsters over there. I swear, you know, Dr. Bray, like when I was talking to you and, you know, getting introduced to you and everything, you were talking about, oh, I'm going to bring Monsters and all that fun stuff. And I saw a picture and you were like built and everything. I was like, oh, this dude's got to be a prior Marine. You exude Marine, man. I kid you not.
When I travel abroad, foreigners always ask me, or I'm a foreigner in that case, natives always ask me, are you in the U.S. Army? Because I have a short haircut and I like to go to the gym, right? But no. In fact, I will say this because I believe this with all my heart. People who criticize the military and law enforcement need a lobotomy, right? They need their brain looked at because these people put on a uniform and fight for our freedom. And I'll tell you right now, I'm too chicken shit to go out there and do that. I don't want to do it. So thank God we have those people who will. So I take it as a compliment.
You know, absolutely, Dr. Bray. You know, it's crazy to say, even on the environment at KSU right now, you know, we actually held, so the KSU College Republicans held like a little event where we stood out on the green when we were, I think we were joined with Turning Point USA at the time. And we were signing, you know, little thank you notes. We had people come up, sign thank you notes for police officers, and we were going to go give it to the police officers, and it was going to be this really, really nice thing. We had people coming out saying, you know, horrible thing about police this, horrible thing about police that. And it was distressing to see because, you know, these kids who say they've got all this empathy for everybody, you know, everybody. Oh, I have so much empathy for somebody who's in a struggle and everything. Do they even think about, and no, they don't, but do they even think about the fact of all the things that go through a person's mind when they're putting on that uniform in the morning? The things they've got to think about. Am I going to see my kid when I come home tonight? Am I going to see my wife? Am I going to get shot today? Am I going to get stabbed today? Is somebody going to run over me with a car? I don't know, but I'm putting the uniform on anyway.
Right. That doesn't enter their mind. And I often say that being that stupid should be illegal. Like that's just, it's foul on all levels.
Yeah. And especially when you act on it, you know.
And this isn't a statistics talk, but I love stats. And when you think about, you know, they don't want an individual behavior from their identity group to be extrapolated on that entire group, but they have no problem doing it the other way around. When one police officer or a group of them behave badly, they extrapolate it on the more than 2 million law enforcement officers. People don't know the numbers, right? If it was 5 out of 10, well, that's 50% bad people. It's not even near 1%. So we've got to get this information into everybody's brains because that's what keeps America so ignorant.
And it's called breaking out of the bubble, Dr. Bray. It's called breaking out of the bubble, just like you did. And now you're having all of these thoughts and everything. I mean, a couple years back or however many years back, I mean, did you even actually have some of these thoughts? Did you agree with some of these things that were going on?
No. So I'm a big picture guy. Yeah. And so whenever a news event happens, I don't sit on the couch and make a verdict. I wasn't there. I wasn't there. And the news company is giving me 30 seconds or 60 seconds. What happened in the morning to this person and what led up to that outcome, right? We make individual choices in this world that lead to individual outcomes. The political left, social justice warriors, all they focus on is the outcome, as if bad things don't happen to white people. Oh, bad things happen to all people. We just don't get the media coverage, and they don't fan those flames for political votes.
And what's so fascinating is you saying those things. I can just see the comments now, calling you like a white supremacist, of this and that. It's like, no, this is truth.
Bring it on.
Seriously, right? I love that attitude, man. All right, so I kind of want to get back. I want to get back to the DEI stuff, okay? And this is what I particularly want to hone in on is you talk about like, okay, you were sending emails, to the university and things of that nature. What prompted sending those emails? What was the policies that were getting pushed down that kind of made you feel wary?
So I sent an email in September of 2021 in response to an email we got from the dean, she passed it from the, you can't make this name up. This is the name of the office. The Division of Diverse and Inclusive Excellence. And it produces division. The joke writes itself, right? So we get an email from these folks telling us that they're putting on a workshop, and this would be the second year because they did it in fall of 2020. I had no idea, or I probably would have stood up. So this is fall of 2021. And the title of the workshop is Check Your Privilege. Now, remember, I haven't been on social media. I had never heard of white privilege, the term, until all of this, right? That's how bad of an idea it is, right? If it doesn't make it through my educational system, it's probably junk, just like some other things that we could talk about. So I get this email saying, check your privilege. So I click on it and I see the two resources, the only two resources that they were teaching. Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack by a kook feminist professor named Peggy McIntosh, right? And Ibram X. Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist, or some, I can't remember the title, but both of them are frauds. So I thought for a second, and I thought, I've had enough. So all I did, instead of flying off the handle, and this was before my therapist, by the way, this is why I got her. She does me good. I sent one question email to all my colleagues. I said, can somebody please enlighten me as to who exactly needs to have their privilege checked? ? Because I thought, I'm an academic. I get paid to ask questions. Here's my question. It got canceled immediately, pulled off the internet as if it didn't exist. I heard that they were furious with the creator of it. He's no longer at KSU, by the way. And that's all it took. It took one person to ask one question for it to disappear. And that's what I want America to know.
Well, Dr. Bray, that is exactly it. What a lot of people don't understand is like, a lot of folks are compassionate. We're compassionate folks. When you get presented with this stuff, you're just like, oh, okay, they want to feel better. That's really nice. No, we're at a point now where they're trying to ideologically undermine the foundations of the American system. Right? This power system that they say is so bad by implementing their own power authority on top of it, right? But in that Dr. Bray, it is utterly fascinating to me how they buckle so quick when you stand up and you say something that just totally undermines what they're purporting. It's like, okay, let's do this Socratically. You say that I am just oozing full of white privilege. Explain to me how I'm privileged. And then they'll say, okay, society this, society that. No. Me.
Now.
Me. Now. No. Right now. Mm-hmm. How am I white? Oh, you're asking me questions. Well, you were asking me questions. It's hilarious. It's so funny to deal with. Do you have a story on that?
Yeah, I do. I went on a date not too long ago in the fall of the 2021-ish with a very handsome black man, master's degree in some type of science, I can't remember, well-educated. His mom and his sister, also college grads. Nobody in my family is a college grad, just me. I'm the only person who went. So they're all well off and highly educated. And the topic of systemic racism came up, right? And this all ties into white privilege, but systemic racism came up and I asked for a definition. He looked a little off guard, right? I still asked for my definition. and I asked for 2 data points. Give me 2 examples, because I'm an empirical guy. Empirical means real world research, right? Give me some observations, and totally back down, right? There was no explanation of what it meant or any data points, even though it's everywhere, right? I love it's everywhere. You'd think that everything, I had just killed the mood, everything was completely gone. Nope, the date wasn't over. That's all I'll say.
No kidding.
Literally, when you, like you said, when you stand up and you say something, they realize real quick, shit, I don't have an argument, right? What am I supposed to do now? Retreat.
Usually it's either retreat or I'm just going to yell louder. That's the 2 that I've experienced.
We were at dinner. I don't think that would have went well. I drove. I would have left.
I love it, man. So here's what I want to follow up with. We talk about this existing in the collegiate system, and it's getting a lot more prevalent within the collegiate system, to the point now where I think KSU, personally, as a college, has 2020 to 2023 being the time span in which DEI policy is to be implemented within the university system as a whole. That's quite literally like by the end of 2023, they're going to have diversity, equity, and inclusion within all departments of KSU. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't heard this. Can you send me that? Because I'd like to light it up.
I absolutely can. It's I kid you not, it is a whole like schedule, and it gives the progression report and all of that fun stuff. And one of the things that they aim to implement is quite literally diversity, equity, inclusion within all departments, within all classes, and you have to address race within each class at some point.
Okay, and I'll tell you what I told the faculty senate meeting, which got them all very quiet. They were pushing a document, this was last year, and it was basically a template, right? Everything they have on the far left is just a template. It probably comes from somebody at Harvard, right? Everybody kisses their booty. And then it flows down to all of their universities. Well, we got a document, one of our professors was pushing it. There was a term on there called gender justice. I thought it sounded like a cartoon, personally. So I asked them to define it. Crickets. Then I asked them, you want me to vote on this? Please define it. So then I got some diatribe, right? And I was like, I thought that's what it meant. And then I told them, I just want to make sure, and this is public, I mean, the meetings are public. I made sure, what you're telling me is that I can talk about gender and race in my finance courses, right? I just want to make sure this is clear, because I can introduce the following research. It is widely known that Blacks and Latinos or Hispanics spend up to 30% more of their paychecks on what's called conspicuous consumption. That is flashy items, cars, clothing, and jewelry. Right? They got very quiet because that's not the story they want told when it comes to gender and race. But those are the empirical facts. And if Dr. Bray needs to talk about them in class, he sure will.
Well, exactly. But then again, they come in and they say, "Oh no, you're racist, you're transphobe, you're such and such."
That's why we have legal system, an American justice, not social justice.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I've sent the signal that, I have no problem.
Well, here's the thing that I want to end this on, Dr. Bray, if you don't mind. In my last podcast, we were talking about like what is diversity, equity, inclusion in terms of like a parent, seeing it happen within their child's school, because it's difficult. This stuff is very, subversive, right? As a college professor at this point in time, when you're talking to a parent that's thinking about, having their kid come to a college university, what is one of the things that you would talk with them about? Would it be about this stuff, and to what degree? And should they take this into consideration as to their child's how could you say this, like scholastic upbringing maybe, or collegiate upbringing?
So I attended a Stanford virtual conference on academic freedom and freedom of speech back in November. One of the things they mentioned was that these administrators who are so embedded in DEI, they have complete control over freshman orientation and the trainings, right? Faculty should take those away. We're the smartest people on campus. Sorry about that, but people in real disciplines with PhDs, you're deep into your topic, you're doing something real. I'm not talking about gender studies. I'm talking about STEM, finance, econ, business, nursing, right? We should be the ones who are educating freshmen on how they're about to handle a college experience. They should be taught about merit, fairness, and equality, not DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Right? I could talk for 3 hours about those 3 words, which we're not going to do today. But yeah, I mean, I would say to kids, and I don't have kids, but I would say if something makes you feel uncomfortable from the administration, the faculty, or the staff, you send it to me immediately. Right? And I also want through this podcast to know that anybody, and I said this at a faculty senate meeting or an email, anyone on this campus who doesn't feel comfortable talking to somebody else about anything, you come find Dr. Bray. I'm ready.
That is the most important thing, Dr. Bray, because when I started the KSU College Republicans, for example, it wasn't necessarily like to saturate the KSU campus with Republicans, as much as it was that I realized these kids had nowhere to talk. They had nowhere to express their conservative beliefs without being stamped down by some teacher that's been there for like 19 years, that's been, spouting off this stuff. I'm not talking about any particular teacher. Really, just the general stories that I get from these kids would make your hair stand up. Now some of it is, it's teachers like just pushing the kids to think for themselves, and they're asking the hard questions so that the kid can think outside of his own paradigm. That's fine. But it's when the teacher comes in and says, oh, no, you need to be thinking about this because society has done this for so many years and you need to go out and change society. I call that applied postmodernism, but that's a whole subject in itself. But, Dr. Bray, thank you so much for bringing this perspective. And I hope it'll be an ongoing perspective, because this is going to be an ongoing battle as things, get more difficult, because you're going to have folks saying like, oh, we need to battle this guy. We need to go out and push this stuff. And you seem to be the guy that's ready to do it, in my opinion. And I'm just curious, do you have any last things that you want to say?
What I would just circle back to, and I used the White House term, circle back. What I would say is, again, the opinions that we're sharing today are the most popular. At some point, Americans will have to stand up and say, we have to support that voice. So I think I'm ready. Yeah, I mean, does it terrify me a little bit? Sure, right? People are going to call me names, right? That's okay. I've been called worse. So good to go.
I love it. Well, hey, here's to being called horrible names together. Dr. Bray, it's been a pleasure. Have a good one.